So things like commercial clear cutting, which is essentially harvesting everything of value off an overstory in your woodlot, diameter limit cutting, these are all forms of what we call high grading, which is essentially just mining for value, extracting generally the most valuable timber on a site and removing it without really much concern for what's coming up behind it. And over centuries, this has been done repeatedly in a lot of our woodlots throughout the Appalachian forest, and it's true of much of the east and even huge swaths of the western forest as well. Repeated entries time and time again into these forests to basically extract their value without much concern for leaving value behind. And so that's kind of the exact opposite of forestry altogether. When we harvest trees utilizing forestry concepts, we're trying to leave these stands in a better condition than when we found them. And in many cases, sound silviculture involves taking out the worst trees first and leaving the valuable trees behind and kind of keeping that value growing over the long term until it's time to harvest. And then we're removing trees that are overtopping seedlings and saplings beneath them that would allow for us to sustainably continue to supply ourselves with wood. So we're actually standing in a stand right now that was formerly high graded, actually experimentally high graded. So we are on Virginia Tech's property here, and what was performed in the stand behind me, or in this woodlot behind me, was a diameter limit cut, meaning that all the trees that were large and generally of the greatest value were sort of sloughed off, leaving behind, in most cases, things that are of lesser value, that were of low interest to our logger. So you can see some evidence of a former harvest, some scattered stumps kind of throughout this woodlot behind me. And what's come up behind it is a lot of chestnut oak. We have some white pine coming in. You go further into this woodlot, you see a lot more black gum, a lot more red maple. Now, that's generally the result of a lot of these degrading harvesting practices, where future value isn't really of concern to the logger, and maybe the landowner doesn't necessarily know the ramifications of these types of treatments. But this is actually an instance in which utilizing something like a crop tree release makes a lot of sense. Hopefully scattered throughout a woodlot like this are a few remaining trees that could be salvaged or could be found and promoted to kind of take what was degraded through mismanagement and promote value back into this forest.